You were in a federal prison, Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, sir. The FCI Tallahassee.
And when did the rapes by this federal prison employee of you occur? Just what year?
Well, it started in about 2020, and then ended in 2022, August of 2022.
Okay. And you reported him,
I did.
and he was eventually punished.
Correct.
And what was his punishment?
3 months.
Was he prosecuted?
Yes.
I mean, in federal court or state court, if you know?
I don't know if it was state court or not. I know it was in Florida.
Yeah. And he got 3 months for rape?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's part of the problem right there. What you allow is what will continue.
I
I
agree.
mean, 3 months for rape is absurd, much less for repeated rape. Ms. White, let me ask you a question. You talked about inmates violating sexually and being engaging in offensive conduct with respect to female federal prison staff.
Yes, sir.
Are those inmates who do that not punished?
No, sir, not typically.
Why not?
That's a very good question. Oftentimes, the incidents are reported. Our prisons are very overpopulated. Discipline is an issue that we have been struggling with. Even when they are reported, it's handled internally with a small sanction. Typically, they're removed from general population and placed in special housing unit for a limited amount of time and then placed back in general housing. It's not a true punishment, and it definitely is not a deterrent. Oftentimes, those issues are turned over to the AUSA offices, who decline to prosecute the inmates.
Welcome back to the Red State. Today I'm reacting to a hearing that honestly made my blood boil. A former inmate, Ms. Hernandez, testified that she was repeatedly raped in a federal prison over a period of 2 years, and when the man responsible was finally caught and prosecuted, he received a 3-month sentence. 3 months. Let that sink in. You can rape a woman in federal custody and serve less time than someone caught with small amount drugs or someone who didn't pay a parking fine. This isn't justice. This is a national disgrace. Stick around because this is important. And hey, while you are here, if you believe in holding our leaders accountable and you appreciate this kind of breakdown, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a thing. Let's get down to it.
Inmates.
Okay. Ms. Bowler, let me ask you a couple questions. I want to be sure I understand your testimony. The state of California has a law that says if you're convicted of a crime, you can declare your gender and you can go to a women's prison if you are biologically a male but declare yourself transgender. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Does the state of California require any confirmation of one's gender identity?
There is some type of review process, but it is based on the individual's self-declared gender identity. These individuals don't have to be identifying as transgender or non-binary prior to being convicted and entering prison. It is based on their self-declared gender identity. And I will note that many female inmates we have talked to tell us once they gain access to women's prisons behind closed doors, they are no longer identifying as transgender. They are embracing their natural male identity.
Is Is this primarily an issue in California, or does your organization get reports from other states?
It is certainly the most pervasive in California, since California was on the forefront, one of the first states in the country to pass this state law. But the BOP also generally recommends housing inmates based on their gender identity. There is, again, a review process there.
Wait, you
where
say the BOPs, that's the federal prison
Bureau
system?
of Prison. Under the Biden-Harris administration, they ordered federal prisons to recognize trans-identified inmates' health and safety when making housing decisions, and even declared for the first time that gender-affirming surgery may be medically appropriate, which means taxpayers would be funding it.
These rapes that you talked about, do we have any idea how many have occurred nationwide?
I think that is one of the problems, and that was one of the problems, my understanding, going into PRERA, that there was a lack of reporting. I can tell you in California, state numbers are that 2,186 trans-identified inmates exist in the state. As of now, I'm aware of 351 of them requesting to go to female
Okay, could you give me those numbers once more? I apologize.
2,186 trans-identified inmates currently exist, according to the latest numbers reported by California. Of those, only 351 of them are actually trying to go into female prisons. And I'd also note, in 2022, 1/3 of trans-identifying inmates seeking access to the female prisons were registered sex offenders.
Okay, so there are 2,200 transgender women in women's prisons in California?
Those are just all trans-identified individuals, so they could be biological men or biological women, from my understanding.
Okay. All right, last question, and I've really gone way over here.
How can a federal employee, someone entrusted with authority, commit one of the most brutal crimes imaginable and walk away with basically nothing? Meanwhile, we have everyday Americans serving years for nonviolent offenses. This is what happens when justice is guided by bureaucracy, political optics, and media narratives, instead of morality, law, and common damn sense. We also heard that inmates who sexually harass or assault female staff are barely punished. They are temporarily removed from general population and then tossed right back in. No criminal charges, no real consequences, no deterrent whatsoever. Here's the truth nobody in Washington wants to say. When you stop punishing evil, evil grows stronger and more confident. Then it gets even worse. California allows biological men to declare themselves women and be transferred into women's prisons. No medical history required, no long-term identification, just, I identify as X today. And surprise, some of these inmates stop identifying as transgender once they get inside women's facilities. This is not about rights. This is not about compassion. And it's definitely not about safety. This is state-sponsored access to vulnerable women, and it's driven entirely by politics over reality. I don't care who you are or how you identify outside prison, but housing decisions must be based on biological sex when safety is at stake. Period. We don't have a resource problem. We don't have a policy problem. We have a leadership problem. America's leaders are terrified to speak truth, terrified to enforce consequences, and terrified of being labeled instead of respected. If you are too scared to defend innocent people, you do not deserve a position of power. Here's what should be non-negotiable. Mandatory long sentences for sexual crimes inside custody. Biological sex-based housing only. External oversight, not internal cover-ups. Protect victims, not predators. That is not hateful. That is moral, logical, and humane. Look, America cannot call itself a civilized nation while excuse-making for rapists and experimenting with ideology inside prisons. This isn't left versus right. This is right versus wrong. If you believe victims deserve justice, if you believe prisons shouldn't be playgrounds for predators, and if you're tired of weak leadership ruining this country, then comment, and share so this message doesn't get buried by big tech. And as always, stand for truth, stand for justice, stand for America. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.